Channeling Entertainment, the 10-year history of the Reviewing Network will soon be available for you to own starting this Friday. Very soon, you'll have this lovely book looking back on the past 10 years of the creation of the Reviewing Network, and also filled with pages, lots and lots of pages, talking about how it all began back in the early days to today. Make sure you pick up your copy using the links below. Here's how to order. To order your copy of Channeling Entertainment, the 10-year history of the Reviewing Network, simply go to the links below, starting on Friday through Amazon. Kindle and paperback versions are available as low as $5. A hardcover version is also available for $10. Book cover will not look like the same as it does in the video. Alright, once again, it's another Sunday night here on the Reviewing Network Live, and this is the last video that's going to be a straight-up recap of the weekend box office, because next week is September the 3rd, actually, and that is when we do this within the Reviewing Network Live show weekly. So next week is the very first premiere episode, the official premiere episode of the Reviewing Network Live, so this will be the last time we'll be covering the weekend box office in its solo video format. So if you want to see the box office, you're going to have to listen to the full show when we do it next week. But this weekend is a very interesting week, mostly because of what happened today. And today, of course, was National Cinema Day. And if you don't know what that was, many of the theaters across the country, I think all of them, all their tickets were $4 for every show. So if you couldn't afford to go to the movies, today was the day to go and do it. And apparently a lot of people did go to the movies, because a lot of the movies, you're not going to notice it with the weekend box office here, but a lot of these movies that we're going to be talking about here got big boost on Sunday because of the lower ticket prices. So it does lead to a very interesting conversation that we're going to have at number one, because technically the number one movie is actually the number two, maybe the number three movie. Basically, what I'm going to tell you is that these numbers that they're being reported here are just the estimates from the early ticket sales they got for today. But that does not mean that these are going to be the official numbers going into Monday. When we get the final numbers, a lot of these movies could switch around, and a movie that had been the number one movie for a long period of time could be back at number one, depending on what happens with the ticket sales that we get when they reveal the whole ticket sales tomorrow. So we're going to work with what we have here, because these are the numbers that we currently have right now. So with that said, let's just go ahead and jump on into it. Let's start off with the number 5 film, and that is, of course, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Mutant Mayhem. About to close in on $100 million, currently at $98.1 million after 4 weeks. Only dropped 28% from last week. Technically 29 if you want to round it up, 28.6%. $6.1 million. This is a film that only cost $70 to $80 million to make. It's already made $135 million worldwide. It's a big hit at this point. I mean, it's a hit film. For an August family film, it's very rare to come by, and this film did pretty well. Is doing pretty well. Will do pretty well going forward, because, like I said, I keep saying, there is no big new family film competition for this until we get to Paw Patrol, which is coming up at the end of September. So it's got a good bit of time to make some more money, and it will probably make more than $100 million. It'll probably make more than $100 million. Even it's going to make more than $100 million, but it's going to probably end up, if it's lucky, maybe around 120 to 130 million is what I'm kind of projecting at this point. But yeah, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Mutant Mayhem still sticking around, still a great movie. If you haven't seen it, you're really missing out on something really good. So on to the number 4 movie, and that is Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer. Just barely crossing over the $300 million mark this weekend. $300,024,260 after 6 weeks, $9 million, only dropped 16%. And what more can you say about Oppenheimer, man? It's going to close in around 900 to 950 worldwide when it's all said and done. It's at 777 right now, $777 million worldwide. And for a film that's over 3 hours long, it is mostly very dialogue-filled and not really a whole lot of action going around. That's the power of Christopher Nolan. This is his highest-grossing non-Batman movie he's ever made, and that really says a whole lot about what Christopher Nolan brings to the table with every movie that he does. And once again, not really much more to say about this one. Oppenheimer, if you haven't seen it, you're missing out on one of the best movies of the year. So let's get to number 3. This was the number 1 film last week. Dropped down to number 3 this week, and that is DC's Blue Beetle. Blue Beetle dropped down to 49%, which is a steep drop, but it's actually the best drop of all the DC movies that have come out this year. It had a better drop than Shazam. It had a better drop than The Flash. But then again, the opening for Blue Beetle was one of the lowest of the DC universe. $12.8 million, $12,765,000. $46.3 million. This film cost around $100 million to make, and like I said before, with the worldwide grosses, it'll be okay. It's at $81.8 million right now, so it's going to get close to that $100 million worldwide mark. So it's not it's not a bad opening for this per se. I did kind of wish that it did have a little bit of a better hold, because I finally saw this movie yesterday, and it is a ton of fun. I actually had a really good time watching this movie. It's a fun movie. It doesn't ask you to do too much. It just wants you to go in, have a good time with it. It knows that it's taking from several different superhero movies like Iron Man and Shazam and all these other different comic book movies we've had. It knows it knows what it is, and it did a very good job at it. I thought it was a very good, fun summer movie, and not much whole competition coming up for it in the next couple of weeks. There's not a big, universally appealing teen movie. There's a lot of adult movies coming up soon, with The Equalizer 3 next week, and then a couple weeks from that we have A Haunting in Venice. But yeah, maybe it's got a chance to stick around in the next couple of weeks. One would hope. But now let's get to the very interesting thing that we have going on with the number 2 and the number 1 film. I'll start with the number 2 film, which is, of course, Barbie. Now, Barbie, of course, was the number 1 movie for the past 4 weeks. It finally dropped down to 2 after Blue Beetle came out. It's number 2 again with $17.1 million. It only dropped 18% from last week. $594.8 million. This thing's going to cross $600 million next week. It's already surpassed the Super Mario Brothers movie as the highest grossing film of the year. Needless to say, this is a monster success. Barbie has made over $1.3 billion worldwide. Who would have thunk it? Who would have thunk that this movie would have had the legs that it's had? And it's still hanging around in there. And it's going to take full advantage of the fact that the family audience doesn't have a really big new kids film coming, like I said, until Paw Patrol comes out. And it's a film that still has a mass universal appeal, not just to families, but also to to adults as well. But it leads into the very interesting thing going on with the number 1 movie. And the number 1 movie is Gran Turismo. So the number 1 movie is Gran Turismo. $17.3 million is what Sony is reporting. However, keep in mind that this movie had sneak previews on August 11th and August 18th. Now, supposedly, Sony is combining the sneak previews from the previous 2 Fridays and putting it together with the opening weekend of this film. So, according to what I read on I read this on Deadline Hollywood. Now, what's going on here is that Gran Turismo has been declared the number 1 movie with $17.3 million, despite the fact that it had an $8.5 million opening and then dropped off to $4.1 million on Saturday. However, Warner Brothers is claiming that Barbie's 6th weekend is at $17.1 million, while other studios are saying it's at a $15.1 million take after a $5.3 million Saturday. Now, Warner Brothers is apparently irate with how Sony's handling a preview box office accounting on Gran Turismo is playing out, and Warner thinks that Sony should back out of the non-Thursday previews out of Gran Turismo's Friday, which was $3.9 million, so that Barbie could be the number 1 film for the 5th time. And because Gran Turismo's previews, from what I remember seeing, they had like a 2.5. I think each one had like a $2.5 million gross on August 11th and August 15th. Is in August 18th, if I'm not mistaken. I could be reading that wrong. Let me just make sure I get my information here. Yeah, so basically Warner Brothers is basically claiming that they have the number 1 movie because they don't think Sony should be including the $5 million that Gran Turismo made on the preview sales, which technically, if you took the $5 million away from it, Blue Beetle would actually move up to number 2, and that means Gran Turismo would open around number 3. But here's another thing that you need to bring into the equation here. As I mentioned, it's National Cinema Day today, where basically tickets cost you $4 for any film in any format at thousands of cinemas everywhere. And basically, everyone's going out to the movies on this day. And according to many ticket sale analytics, They say that Barbie was leading in terms of ticket sales. If you go onto Twitter and see all the different theater seating areas, you see like films like Barbie and Blue Beetle and Gran Turismo and also Oppenheimer, all these different movies with sold out theater seat, with more than unusual sold out seats. So there is a lot there to really take into account here. So like I said before, Monday's actuals will actually determine the official order, so there is definitely a chance that everything could be shifted around here. We could find out that Barbie did move into number 1, maybe Blue Beetle did move up to number 2, and Gran Turismo might have opened up to only the number 3, and like it's just going to depend on where everything kind of switches out in terms of how the new releases go here. But honestly, I'd rather see Barbie at number 1 again, because Gran Turismo I thought was not that great of a movie. I got to see it yesterday, and I was pretty disappointed by it. It has a good idea to it. It has a lot of good ideas overall. The idea of not just making a straightforward video game adaptation, making it based off of the story about a true story about this guy who played the Gran Turismo video game and ends up becoming a race car driver in the process. I think that's a good idea, just bad execution overall. But I mean, listen, regardless of what happens with Gran Turismo, it's probably gonna be one of the more profitable blockbusters of the year, because the budget on this movie is only $60 million. Now, when I first saw that number, I was thinking, why is this only $60 million? And then you realize, oh, it's Neil Blomkamp who directed this. And Neil Blomkamp is, of course, the guy who made District 9 for half that budget, and it became a big blockbuster hit. So Gran Turismo is going to make its money back in some way, shape, or form. Right now, it's at $53.8 million worldwide, so it's basically almost at that mark where it's going to make its money back regardless. So I don't know if Sony was expecting a lot more from this. I don't know if there's going to be the argument that, well, if the stars were here, maybe this movie would have done better, which I don't think that really would have made much of a difference. Like, if you sell a movie to, like, we have yet to see the movie where if you don't have the stars there, you don't really have the big hit there. You don't really have a big hit. Some people say that Strays was the first example of that. Was Strays, even if the stars were there, even they couldn't sell that movie. But Gran Turismo, it's a very interesting situation we've got here. And like I said, everything that is in the box office top 10 right now could definitely shift around depending on what happens when we get the final estimates from today's box office, because of course National Cinema Day is going to have a huge impact on, early sales and people who are just coming in off the streets. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that pans out. So that's the top 5. There was a lot of stuff that came out this weekend, stuff that really was not going to make much of an impact to begin with, but we might as well talk about them briefly. So let's talk about the latest Liam Neeson movie. Yeah, the Liam Neeson movie you probably didn't even know even existed until I told you there was a new Liam Neeson movie, Retribution, which is the latest of a series of why is Liam Neeson making these generic-ass movies category. I mean, he's been doing this now for a couple of years now, ever since the pandemic got started. It started with Honest Thief when that came out in 2020, and we've been getting movies like this ever since. The Marksman, The Ice Road, Blacklight, Memory, Marlowe, and now Retribution. And really, like, you could honestly make the argument that this is the equivalent to Steven Seagal making those direct-to-video movies, except in this case, he's making these movies for the big screen, and they're just putting them out there for no real reason, because they don't even though not a lot of people are going to see these movies. This is a film that made only $3.3 million. It opened in 1,700 theaters, so it's a wide release, and it cost $20 million to make. So I really don't know what the hell is going on with Liam Neeson nowadays. Why does he keep making these movies? It just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. I feel like he's just making these movies just to get them out there, just to make a quick paycheck. And Liam Neeson's a great actor, but he does not deserve to keep making he deserves much better than these movies, is what I'm trying to say. And yeah, a lot of these movies that he's made since the pandemic started have not been good. I don't know why he keeps doing it, but he still keeps making them. So we're still going to get a couple more of these. There is one for Netflix that comes out pretty soon. There's one called Thug, where he plays a brooding, aging gangster. And then there's Cold Storage, which you'd think would be a sequel to Cold Pursuit, but no, it's anything but that. But that's coming soon too, so I don't know when he's going to get back on track here, but it just seems weird that he keeps taking these projects that Steven Seagal would have taken these projects for direct-to-video movies years ago, but because Liam Neeson's in it, he's a bigger draw. Put him on the big screen, even though these films do not make any money whatsoever. I don't get why he's doing this. I don't know why. Has anybody's ever seen these movies? Give me an idea, because I really do not know for certain. But what came after that was another film that came out this weekend called The Hill, which brought in $2.5 million, which I don't know the budget on this film in particular, but you basically have a film where you have this baseball player overcoming a physical handicap in order to try out for a legendary Major League scout, and the young man in here is played by Colin Ford, and the old man and the Major League scout is played by the father is played by Dennis Quaid, and Dennis Quaid kind of starred in a movie similar to this, a much better movie similar to this called The Rookie, which came out over 20 years ago. Yeah, like I said, I don't know how much the budget is on this, but they got a decent cast to it. I mean, Scott Glenn, Bonnie Bedelia, John Smoltz, Dennis Quaid's the biggest star in here, which, I mean, I don't know. I don't know too much about this movie. The reviews for this have not looked pretty good, so I don't know what kind of a legacy this movie's going to have. It's just going to come and go straight to DVD. It'll be in the Walmart bin. It'll be at the Dollar Tree whenever they have the sale on all their DVDs. You'll find that, and you'll find Retribution in there too, probably. But yeah, other than that, I don't know too much about this movie. So The Hill, that's one of the other ones from the top 10 overall. There were some other ones that came out this weekend, including Golda, which I know nothing about. The Jurassic Park re-release, which my movie theater straight up lied to me when they put that poster up there last week. I thought it was coming there. It was not there. But, hey, another $1.7 million added to that for the 30th anniversary. I keep hearing it's basically just the same version that came out in 2013, the 3D release of it, which I saw that one already, and I saw that one already on the big screen, so I'm not that upset about it, but it would have been nice to see again on the big screen, honestly. And then you have this other movie called Bottoms, which is produced by Elizabeth Banks, who also gave us Cocaine Bear this year, which, basically two high school senior girls set up a fight club to hook up with cheerleaders before graduation. It has Ayo Edebiri from The Bear, and also Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem, and it also has Marshawn Lynch among its cast. Got pretty good reviews. It actually didn't too bad for a limited release. It brought in $516,000 in just 10 theaters, a $51,000 average, so it's a big hit, and it's a film that's going to go into wider release in the weeks to come, so it'll be very interesting to see how that one pans out. And then you have some other movies that were opening back up in theaters, like the Super Mario Brothers movie came back to theaters this week, adding another $280,000 to its total. It's up to $574 right now. What else do we got here? I know Transformers Rise of the Beast came back to theaters in my theater. But then you had The Little Mermaid come back with a sing-along, and not a lot of people really came back for that one. It got a boost, but really not by that much. $510,000. $297.7 million so far. I don't think it's going to hit the $300 million mark, honestly. But the film still made its money back. $500 million, over $568 worldwide. $568 million worldwide, so regardless, it's still making its money back, regardless of what happens from here. As far as everything else in the top 10, Meg 2, The Trench, $5.1 million this week, $74.4 million. Strays didn't have a too big drop-off, but still not a big success this movie is, and $4.7 million, $16.1 million after 2 weeks. Definitely not the success they were hoping for. And Haunted Mansion's just crashing and burning. $62.2 million after 5 weeks. $2.1 million. I actually haven't checked to see how this is doing compared to the Eddie Murphy film. And it's back to being lower than the Eddie Murphy movie, which just why? Like, why did you do this? Like, why did you put this out there? Why did you spend $150 million on it? Why, Disney? Just why? But Talk to Me dropped out of the top 10, as did Mission Impossible, as did Sound of Freedom. All brought around $2 million altogether, so standard stuff there. So that is the overall weekend box office for this weekend. And like I said, this is the last video of a standalone box office video until we get to the Reviewing Network Live's first episode, which will go up next week. So once again, if you want to see that and you want to see more of these news stories that I've been bringing up over the last couple of days, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and I'll see you guys next week for the premiere of the Reviewing Network Live. So Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. So until then, take care.